All right, let's get rolling. Up next, Brian MacConnell talking about living in the gray area.
Thank you. I want to tell you about living in the gray area, and that involves a Cincinnati police officer shooting an unarmed 19-year-old, the federal deficit, and a 7,500-mile road trip that changed my life. First, let's start April 7th, 2001. Cincinnati police officer Steve Roach is patrolling over the Rhine. He hears a radio call that a guy named Timothy Thomas is on the run. He joins the chase. The cops know Timothy Thomas. He has 14 open warrants, almost all of them for things like no seatbelt, driving without a license. In the last 2 months, Thomas has been pulled over 11 times, 21 violations, virtually all of them the same thing. No seatbelt, no license. So Roach is chasing him. Thomas knows the cops as well as they know him, and he knows they're pissed. He's ignoring their warrants, 14 open warrants, and they're running after him. Sounds a little bit like a misdemeanor game of cat and mouse, doesn't it? Thomas turns into a dead-end alley. This dead-end alley. Roach comes around the corner, shoots him in the heart. Roach says he thought Thomas had a gun, was reaching for a gun. And later he says that his finger twitched on the trigger. After that, in this intense media scrutiny for a few days, there were, depending on who's describing, protests or riots downtown over the Rhine. This is the way that a website called Revolutionary Worker Online described it. A young black man in a poor black neighborhood where cops act like an occupying army. Does anybody wonder why he was running from the cops? And then there's a website called adversity.net, which talks about being for victims of reverse discrimination. It said, black looters, rioters, and thugs destroyed property and assaulted whites during days of racial terror. Look at the difference there. Cops as an occupying army from the Revolutionary Worker, black looters and thugs destroying property and assaulting whites from adversity.net. Now, I've used some very extreme examples here, commentary about this, and you can probably guess where I'm going. I believe that the middle, the gray area, the truth is the gray area where truth almost always resides. Isn't it possible, if we think about it, rather than taking those extreme sides, that both Thomas and Roach were wrong? Thomas lived in a community where 15 black men had been killed in police custody in the last 6 years. Roach, on the other hand, is chasing a guy who he knows has 14 open warrants. He doesn't know, given police technology at the time, what those warrants are for. Isn't it easy to imagine his adrenaline is running high? So what if we carefully look at different sides of the issue? Isn't it possible to see that they are both wrong, maybe both irresponsible, but also both taking actions that might be understandable? If we look in this day and age, I think we can see that there are no simple answers to complex problems. But maybe with the prevalence of the thousands of media outlets and information we have, maybe we're getting overwhelmed and maybe we're looking for simple answers. I want to talk a little bit also about the federal deficit as another example. When I hear that the options are raise taxes or cut spending, I automatically look to the middle. I don't think there are simple answers like that. So what's the deal about this road trip? In 2005, I had the chance to take a trip for 5.5 weeks around the country, spending a lot of time in the West, in the mountains. It's an area where logging is very, very important. People either seem to be clear cutters or tree huggers. The truth is in the middle. Most people seem to understand that this is an area that's very important to our livelihood, but it's also a precious resource we have to guard. So what if I try to commit to seeing both sides of an issue? What if I try to think at all times wonder what you're thinking about. What if I do a little objective investigation, apply a little tolerance, do a little critical thinking, a little walking in your shoes and listening to your side of the argument? That, I think, is a way that we can change the world. Doing all of those things, walking in each other's shoes, taking responsibility to look at all sides, and there are always more than two, of any kind of issue. Thanks.